The silence in our bedroom wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the heavy, suffocating sort that makes you hear the frantic thrum of your own heartbeat against your ribs. It was 2:14 a.m. in our Oak Creek home, a house that cost more than my parents made in a decade, yet felt like a hollowed-out tomb. The central air hummed a low, lonely tune, circulating air that felt recycled and cold. I lay there staring at the tray ceiling, tracing the faint lines of shadow cast by the oak trees outside. I felt the vast, invisible canyon that had opened up between my wife and me, a physical ache that no amount of money could soothe. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly, barely brushing Elena's shoulder, a silent, desperate plea for just a moment of connection after a month of icy distance. She didn't just move away, she recoiled with a sharp, a visceral jerk, as if my touch was caustic acid. She sat up abruptly, the moonlight through the high-arched windows catching the sharp, cold edge of her expression. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and raw disgust that made my skin crawl. It was the look you give a stray dog that won't stop whining at the door. "Be a man and stop begging for intimacy, Marcus," she snapped, her voice like a whip cracking in the dead of night. "It's pathetic. A real man doesn't have to ask for what a woman doesn't want to give. He just knows when the fire's out. Your constant neediness is the least attractive thing about you." The words felt like a physical blow to my solar plexus, knocking the wind out of me. I stayed frozen, the heat of embarrassment rising to my neck and burning my ears. I wanted to defend myself, sure, to remind her of the 5 years we'd spent building this life, the nights we spent talking until dawn about our dreams. But the lump in my throat was too large to swallow. Before I could find my voice, she was out of bed, grabbing her designer silk robe from the foot of the bed and leaving the room without a backward glance. I heard her bare feet padding down the hallway, followed by the heavy final click of the guest room door. That sound, the locking of a door, was the true start of the end. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Morning came with the mocking brightness of a crisp Illinois spring. The sun hit the manicured lawns of our cul-de-sac, making everything look perfect, safe, and expensive. Our kitchen was a masterpiece of stainless steel and white marble, a $50,000 renovation that Elena had insisted on 2 years ago, claiming it would make us the house for neighborhood gatherings. We hadn't hosted a party in 14 months. The sub-zero fridge was full of organic greens and expensive probiotics, but the house was starving for actual substance. I stood by the coffee maker, listening to the rhythmic drip, 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 watching the dark liquid fill the glass carafe. I felt like an intruder in my own home. I was a senior analyst at a top-tier firm in downtown Chicago, a man who spent 10 hours a day calculating risks, identifying market vulnerabilities, and forecasting futures. Yet I hadn't seen the collapse of my own marriage coming. I was excellent at managing millions of dollars, but I was failing at managing the one person who was supposed to be my partner. Elena walked in, looking like she had stepped off a Parisian runway. Her hair was a perfect mahogany wave, her makeup flawless, hiding any trace of the venom she'd spat in the dark. She didn't look like a woman who had just eviscerated her husband's soul. She poured herself a cup of coffee, her eyes glued to her iPhone 15 Pro, her thumb moving with a frantic, rhythmic speed. "Big day at the office?" I asked, my voice sounding thin and foreign even to me. I was trying to find a thread of normalcy to pull on, anything to stop the internal bleeding. "Mm-hmm," she murmured, not even glancing in my direction. "The Henderson account is pushing for a total rebrand by Friday. It's a mess. My team is exhausted. I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up for dinner. Order some Thai or something." I watched her go, noticing a small detail that chilled me more than her words. She was wearing a new perfume, something heavy, floral, and obscenely expensive. It wasn't the scent I had bought her for our anniversary. It was the scent of a woman who was being seen by eyes that weren't mine. A woman who was dressing for an audience of one, and that one wasn't me. The working late excuses had become a script she recited with the practiced ease of a veteran actress. but the cracks were beginning to show in the foundation of her lies. I began to notice the small, jagged edges of her transformation. She had started locking her phone, a device that used to sit open on the counter between us. She'd tilt the screen away when a notification popped up, a faint, my secret smile playing on her lips that she never wore when she was looking at me. The psychological toll was immense. I started questioning my own memory. Had I really been needy? Was I the reason she was pulling away? I spent hours at my desk in the city, staring at spreadsheets but seeing only the coldness in her eyes. I began to realize that gaslighting isn't always about big lies. It's about the small ways someone makes you feel like your needs are an inconvenience. One evening, while the shower was running in the master suite and the steam was beginning to fog the mirrors, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. It wasn't a single text. It was a rhythmic, persistent vibration that felt like a warning bell. I knew the rules. Once you look into the abyss looks back. I picked it up. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. The screen lit up with a message from a contact saved only as G. The suite at the Drake is booked for Thursday. I can't wait to see you in that red wrap dress again. I'm counting the hours until I have you to myself. Marcus has no idea how lucky I am. My heart didn't just break. It felt like it had been hollowed out with a rusted spoon. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was the G, the casual intimacy of a single letter. I looked at the bathroom door, the muffled sound of her humming a pop song over the spray of the water. The woman inside was a total stranger, a predator wearing the skin of my wife. I didn't confront her that night. In the world of high-stakes betrayals, the one who speaks first without evidence loses everything. I needed a paper trail, a hard ledger of her infidelity. I started by auditing our joint accounts, the accounts I funded entirely with my six-figure bonuses from the firm. I found the trail immediately. It wasn't even well hidden. She thought I was too pathetic and too broken to ever check. There were consistent $400 withdrawals from an ATM in Schaumburg, a town Elena had always mocked as low rent in suburban purgatory. Why was she there 3 times a week? I pulled the GPS logs from her SUV, a feature she didn't realize I had synced to my phone for safety years ago. The car had spent more time in a luxury apartment complex parking lot than it had at her marketing firm. The following Thursday, the day of the Drake booking, I didn't go to the office. I told my boss I had a family emergency, which wasn't a lie. I sat in my charcoal gray sedan 3 blocks away from our driveway, the engine off, my breath fogging the windows in the morning chill. At 10:15 a.m., the garage door rolled up. Elena pulled out in her white SUV. She wasn't wearing her usual professional blazer or slacks. She was wearing the red wrap dress, the one G had mentioned. It moved like liquid fire as she stepped out to grab a stray newspaper. She looked beautiful, and it made me want to vomit. I followed her, keeping 2 cars between us at all times, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white against the leather. She wasn't heading toward the loop. She was heading west, toward a life I didn't know existed. Every turn she took was a knife in my back. Every red light we sat at was a minute of my life she had stolen. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. She pulled into the parking lot of the Heights, a luxury mid-rise complex in a trendy pocket of the suburbs. I watched from across the street, parked behind a delivery truck. Elena stepped out of the car, adjusting her hair in the side mirror and checking her lipstick with a radiant, genuine smile I hadn't seen directed at me in 3 years. A man came out of the glass lobby doors. He was younger, probably in his late 20s with an athletic build. He wore a tailored navy suit and a watch that caught the sunlight, a Rolex Submariner that cost more than my first car. He didn't just greet her, he pulled her into a possessive, hungry embrace and kissed her right there in the open, in the middle of a Tuesday morning. It wasn't a peck, it was a claim. And I sat there for 2 hours after they went inside. I watched the clock on the dashboard tick away, each minute a fresh cut. I realized then that my begging for intimacy wasn't a failure of my masculinity. It was a result of her giving every ounce of her passion to a stranger while I paid the mortgage on the house she used to change her clothes. The pain was sharp at first, but then it turned cold. A strange glacial calm settled over me. Marcus the provider was dead. Marcus the analyst was calculating the cost of her betrayal. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed a specialist who understood the family secrets business. I reached out to Miller, a private investigator, recommended by a senior partner at my firm who had gone through a similarly brutal, American standard divorce. We met at a dive bar on the outskirts of Chicago, in a place where the light was dim enough to hide a man's shame. Miller was a retired CPD detective with eyes that looked like they'd seen every possible way one human could hurt another. I handed him a folder containing the bank statements and the grainy photos I'd taken with my phone. "She's smart, Marcus, but she's arrogant," Miller said, sliding a high-resolution photo across the sticky table. "This is Gregory Vance. He's a trust fund kid whose daddy cut him off 2 years ago for a gambling habit that would make a Vegas high roller blush. Your wife isn't just sleeping with him, she's his primary investor. She's been siphoning your investment dividends into a shell company called Luna Marketing they set up together. They aren't just having an affair, and they're having a liquidation sale of your life." The betrayal went deeper than the bedroom. It was a calculated financial execution. She had been preparing to leave me for months, waiting until the Luna account was fat enough for her and Gregory to disappear. My next stop was the glass and steel offices of Sarah Jenkins, a divorce attorney known in the Illinois circuit as the Great White Shark. She didn't offer me tissues or platitudes. She offered me a tactical map. "The prenuptial agreement you had her sign has a very specific infidelity and lifestyle clause," Sarah explained, tapping a silver pen against her desk. "If we can prove she used marital assets to fund a third party, especially a romantic interest, she loses her claim to the Oak Creek property and your 401k entirely. But we need more than just a kiss in a parking lot. We need the digital trail of that Luna Marketing shell company. We need the family secrets that she thinks are buried." I spent the next week playing the role of the oblivious, pathetic husband. I watched her lie to my face every single morning over coffee. I watched her check her watch, eager to get to her marketing meetings. Every night I retreated to the guest room, fueled by a cold, quiet rage that felt more powerful than any love I'd ever felt for her. I was gathering the wood for her funeral pyre, and she was the one who had handed me the matches. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story, and share your thoughts in the comments. The night I chose for the final move was a Tuesday, unremarkable, humid, and heavy with the scent of an impending Midwestern thunderstorm. I was sitting in the dark of our designer kitchen when Elena walked in at 11:30 p.m. She smelled of expensive gin and that floral perfume that wasn't mine. She didn't even turn on the light. She just moved toward the fridge, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight. "You're still up?" she asked, her voice dripping with irritation. "I thought we agreed you'd stop lurking in the dark like some Victorian ghost, Marcus. It's creepy. It's exactly why I can't stand being in the same room as you. You're like a shadow I can't shake." I reached out and clicked the pendant lights over the marble island. The sudden glare made her wince. I slid a thick manila envelope across the stone. It landed with a heavy thud. "I wasn't lurking, Elena. I was waiting for the Henderson account to finish his drinks with my wife. Or should I call him Greg?" Froze, her hand halfway to the refrigerator handle. Then with a slow, practiced casualness, she walked to the island and opened the flap. I watched her eyes dart over the photos Miller had taken. The ones of her and Gregory at the mid-rise complex, the ones of them laughing over brunch in Schaumburg with my credit card on the table, and the photos of them entering the Drake. "So you spent money on a private investigator?" She tossed the photos back down, a cold smirk playing on her lips. She didn't even try to deny it. "I hope he was expensive, Marcus, because all these show is that I have a life outside of this morgue of a marriage. You want to talk about betrayal? Talk about the fact that you haven't been a man in this house for 3 years. You're a provider, sure, but you're a bore. You're a shell. I needed someone who actually had a pulse." She leaned over the island, her face inches from mine. "You think these photos give you leverage? Gregory and I have been planning this for months. I know every cent in your portfolio. I know the value of this house down to the cent. By the time I'm done with the spousal support and the emotional distress claims my lawyers are drafting, you'll be lucky if you can afford a studio apartment in the city. You're going to pay for every boring second I spent in this house. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, seeing the ugliness that no amount of designer makeup could hide. Is that what Gregory told you? That he was going to help you take me for everything? That he was your partner? He's a partner, Marcus. Something you never knew how to be. She laughed, a jagged sound that echoed off the high ceilings. He's younger, faster, and he actually knows how to make a woman feel alive. You? You're just a paycheck that I'm finally done cashing. I've already moved the first $50,000. You're too late. I opened a second folder. This one contained the digital forensics from the shell company. Gregory Vance isn't a partner, Elena. He's a parasite. Miller found the records. The $40,000 you invested in his tech startup? He spent it at the Rivers Casino in Des Plaines in 48 hours. He's not building a future with you. He's using you to pay off his gambling debts. He's been playing you since the moment you met. The smirk finally wavered. She snatched the bank statements, her eyes scanning the transactions. I saw the moment the realization hit her. The dates of the gambling losses matched the dates she thought he was scouting office space for their new life. Her hand started to shake. And here's the best part, I continued, my voice low and steady. I've already filed for an emergency injunction. Because you used marital funds to finance a third-party business without my consent, and because of the infidelity clause in our prenup, your access to our joint accounts was revoked 3 hours ago. You're not leaving with half, Elena. You're leaving with what you brought in, which, if I recall, was a single suitcase and a mountain of student debt. The storm finally broke outside, thunder rattling the windows of our Oak Creek home. Elena's face went from pale to a deep, ugly red. She lunged for me, her nails raking across my forearm, but I stepped back. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional weight I had just dropped. "Get out," I said. "This is my house," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I picked the tile. I spent months with the designer. I picked the furniture. You can't just throw me out like trash. I have rights." "Actually, you don't. Sarah Jenkins already contacted the Oak Creek PD. Since the house is held in a private trust that you violated through documented financial fraud, you've been served an emergency eviction notice. There's a suitcase in the hallway. It's the one you brought 5 years ago. I suggest you take it and go find Gregory. Well, maybe he can win you a hotel room at the craps table. But I doubt it. Miller says he's already packed his bags for Cabo, without you. If you were in my shoes facing a betrayal that went this deep, where your own partner was planning to destroy your life, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in desperation. I stayed at a hotel in Chicago, giving the local sheriff time to ensure the house was clear. My phone was a constant blur of notifications. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. First came the rage text from Elena. Vows to ruin me, to tell my firm I was abusive, to make sure I never worked in finance again. Then, as the sun came up and the reality of her empty bank account set in, the tone shifted. The begging she had mocked me for became her own weapon. "Marcus, please, I was confused. Gregory manipulated me. He threatened me. We can go to counseling. I love you. I just lost my way. Please don't do this to us." I didn't reply to a single one. I sent them all to Sarah and Miller. By noon, I heard from Miller that Gregory Vance had been spotted leaving his apartment with 3 suitcases, heading toward O'Hare. He hadn't even waited for her to arrive. He had seen the accounts were frozen and realized his golden goose was cooked. He left her with nothing but the debt they had created together. The days following the eviction were a blur of fluorescent office lights and endless spreadsheets. I moved into a temporary executive suite in the Loop, high above the sirens of Chicago, and spent every waking hour with Miller and a forensic accountant named Elias Thorne. When we weren't just looking for affair evidence anymore, we were hunting for the family secrets that Elena had buried under 5 years of carefully manicured lies. Thorne sat across from me in a room smelling of stale coffee and ink. "Marcus, she didn't just siphon your bonuses," he said, tapping a leather-bound ledger. "She's been leveraging your credit score to open shadow lines of credit. She used your identity to co-sign a luxury lease for Gregory's apartment in Schaumburg. If he defaults, which he will, the collection agencies come after you, not her. She wasn't just planning to leave you, she was planning to bankrupt you. The psychological weight of this discovery was crushing. It wasn't just a physical betrayal, it was a total assassination of my future. I stayed up until 4 a.m. most nights, tracing wire transfers to offshore gambling sites and realizing that the woman I had shared a bed with was a high-level predator. Every date night she canceled was a day she spent draining the accounts I had worked 80-hour weeks to build. A week before the first court hearing, I received a visit I didn't expect. Elena's mother, Beatrice, showed up at my temporary suite. She was a woman who prided herself on Old Oak Creek values, meaning she cared more about the appearance of morality than actual truth. "Marcus, surely we can handle this like civilized people," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness as she adjusted her designer scarf. "Elena is fragile. She made a mistake, yes, but to leave her with nothing? To kick her out in the middle of a storm? It's unmanly. Think of the family name, Marcus. Think of how this looks to the neighbors." I looked at her, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to be the nice guy. I realized Elena's entitlement didn't happen in a vacuum. It was a family inheritance. "Beatrice," I said, sliding the file of forged credit applications across the desk, "your daughter didn't make a mistake. She committed multiple counts of felony financial fraud. If you're worried about the family name, I suggest you start preparing for the depositions because I'm not protecting anyone's reputation anymore. The pathetic husband is done being the shield." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Miller tracked Gregory Vance to the international terminal at O'Hare Airport. He had tried to use the last of the Luna marketing funds, money stolen from my retirement account, to buy a one-way ticket to Cabo. But because Sarah had filed the emergency injunction, the transaction was flagged by the bank's fraud department. I arrived at the airport just as the Port Authority was questioning him near the gate. He looked pathetic, shaking, sweating, and clutching a designer carry-on that I had essentially paid for. When he saw me, he started babbling about how it was all Elena's idea. He was more than willing to trade her secrets for a lighter sentence. He gave us the passwords to the encrypted emails where they discussed the domestic abuse frame-up. That was the final nail in the coffin. The day of the final decree in downtown Chicago was cold and gray. Elena sat at the defense table, her hair unwashed. When her power suit wrinkled, she looked like a ghost of the woman she used to be. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with 30 years on the bench, didn't even let her lawyers finish their opening statement about marital neglect. "In my 30 years on the bench," the judge said, looking directly at Elena, "I have rarely seen such a calculated, malicious attempt to dismantle a spouse's life. The infidelity clause is the least of your concerns. This court finds you liable for the full restoration of the diverted funds, and the Oak Creek Property Trust will be dissolved in favor of the plaintiff. You have 24 hours to vacate any remaining interest in the marital estate." I walked out of the courthouse and into the Chicago wind, finally feeling the weight lift. I wasn't the man begging anymore. I was a man who had survived a war and come out the other side with his integrity intact. Justice in the world of family secrets and revenge isn't always about a Hollywood ending. Sometimes it's just the quiet of a new apartment, the ability to look in the mirror and respect the man looking back, and the knowledge that the truth, no matter how painful, is better than a comfortable lie. I learned that being a man isn't about what you provide for a woman who doesn't respect you. It's about the boundaries you set and the respect you demand for yourself. Elena thought she was playing a game she couldn't lose, but she forgot that a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous opponent of all. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share your overall thoughts on Marcus's journey. Your support allows us to keep bringing these stories of justice and high-stakes drama to light. I read every single one of your comments, and I can't wait to hear your take on this one. Subscribe to Family Secrets and Revenge for more. See you in the next one.